Hey, it's syndicated radio talk show host, author, singer Al Cole, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. I come from CBS Radio. My shows are nationally syndicated, and I've helped pave the way to treating women, guys too, with the dignity that they deserve, and I do that in many ways, of course, through my show, People of Distinction, always treating people with dignity that way, and it's aired on very dignified radio networks, including the biggest, airing CBS shows, and that's Apple's iTunes radio network under their professional news talk division, airing CBS shows, Fox News, BBC, NPR, C-SPAN as well, best talk in the country. Around the World is on Apple's iTunes radio network under News Talk. And check out my website as well, peopleofdistinction.org. And you can get clued in on so much more that I do. And you can hear my Apple streams through my website. You can see some of my alliances with people like Ariana Huffington, the founder of the Huffington Post, and read up on my the consulting that I do nationally, major media consulting. CBS Radio is major media. Major media consulting can help a lot of people and do help people in many of the things that I do in terms of understanding how to make a profit from whatever their products or services are through media and interviewing, etc. And I've helped hundreds over the years do that. You can also email me on anything that I do, and you can email me at alcoholic at gmail.com. You heard me right. That's ALCOLEHOLIC at gmail.com. And I really want to thank my CBS radio listeners for coming up with that handle, alcoholic. Seems like from day one, my listeners have been saying, Al, we love what you're doing there, brother. In fact, we're hooked on it. We're alcoholics. Coming up, a guy who you're really going to enjoy, and you're going to learn a lot from this guy, too. His name is Carl Berryman, and he was brought to me by Author Reputation Press. As my listeners know, I have also an interviewing service for businesses out there, particularly self-publishing businesses that bring me a lot of guests to People of Distinction on a pay basis, and these people talk about what they do very grippingly. They're not necessarily nationally known people, but they are people with a lot of brain power and a lot of passions in certain areas, and they want to get these passions and these thoughts out. So they've written books, and we want to get it out for them too. It's a great interview, and Author Reputation Press is one of the fine publishing companies out there that help out with guests to People of Distinction. And if you want to move a book through Author Reputation Press, they can help you. They're one of the best book movers in the business. Go to authorreputationpress.com. Now, getting back to Carl here. Carl Berryman is really, really something. He's written a book called 2025. All right. Now, a lot of people would think, that's in the future. Yes, it is. And before I tell you what it's about, let me tell you a little bit about Carl, and then Carl will tell you a lot more. This guy has so many degrees. He has, bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. I think maybe even a PhD. But he's going to tell you a lot about the degrees that he has. He's well qualified to talk about what he's going to talk about in 2025. He also is a military veteran. And we know that military veterans throughout the United States history have been heroes to the United States people. One of the big things that Carl is going to talk about is merging all of these wonderful, wonderful accolades that he's gotten with degrees and knowledge and military expertise, everything, into Russia and China. Yeah. Now, we know that Russia and China are always big in the news, especially China. Well, you can't even say especially China. Russia, too, with meddling in the 2016 election, and now certain things that are coming up with Ukraine, and so they're always in the news. And, of course, China is big time. China has a chance to surpass the U.S. in gross national product. Making money. Oh, man, because China has a whole bunch of people there, much more than the United States. And a lot of people are afraid. Just maybe in the Cold War, people were afraid of Russia. But even more so now. Russia and China getting together with all of those billions of people, and with all of that cash and all of the know-how that they have with military expertise and technical expertise and everything else, and maybe a lot of that malicious stuff going on. And what if they attacked the United States? The United States has been attacked. We know about 9/11. However, as tragic as it was localized. Basically New York. Also the Pentagon a little bit. But it didn't happen all over the United States, and people all over the United States were not terrorized and many countries are terrorized that way. We know that they're in a constant state of battle, war, especially in the Middle East. It's a terrible way to live. We know that. But what if it came to the United States, all of a sudden being attacked all over the place, and we're saying, where are we going to go? There's no place to go. And Russia and China, they're foremost adversaries here. What are we going to do? Well, Carl is going to answer some of those questions by way of his book 2025 and his military expertise and everything else. He's going to put it on the line that, maybe the United States should do this, maybe the United States should do that, and maybe the United States should do something before 2025 to prevent that. We're going to be talking about it. And Carl is fully equipped to talk about it. Now, I will mention one other thing. With all of the great accomplishments of Carl Berryman throughout his life, the greatest accomplishment has to be his wife, Barb. We really appreciate family on People of Distinction. Everybody's a person of distinction when they try to put love first in their life. Now, Carl has a wonderful wife named Barb who helps him out periodically. And some of you are going to ask, well, how does she help him out with interviews and, knowing about Russia and China and, military things? And she helps out because Carl has a little bit of a hearing problem. Now, we all have problems in our lives, and we all need the people that we love to help us out with our problems. We know that, and we talk about that on People of Distinction. So his wife is here too, Barb, to help Carl out if maybe Carl has to hear something a little bit better from me. And every once in a while I'll intonate in certain ways to make it clear to Carl. This guy is highly intelligent, and we have to understand that when we have any sort of disability, whatever, that doesn't detract from our intelligence. It doesn't detract from our expertise in certain areas. Carl is fully equipped to talk about 2025. And any time that maybe I have to repeat a question or something like that, hey, you, my People of Distinction listeners, you understand. So we're going to bring Carl and Barb on. We're going to say hi to Barb too, but especially Carl right now on People of Distinction with Al Cole. 2025 can be ordered at Amazon.com, and I'd like you to do that. Welcome, Carl and Barb, to People of Distinction with Al Cole. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your assistance here in my hearing problem. You're doing very well.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And Barb, say a quick hi to the people.
Hello. It's wonderful to talk with you, Al.
There you go. All right. So that's Carl's better half, as we put it. That's his wife, Barb. So we're going to be talking about it. Carl, you've written a gripping book here. Obviously, it's fiction because it's into the future. 2025 hasn't happened yet. Hopefully, it's not going to happen at all. But why did you write the book? Now, you have a lot of accomplishments in your life, degrees and all of that. You can run some of that down. Maybe it relates here, and you're a former military man, a wonderful veteran. Tell us how all of these great accomplishments in your life led to this book, 2025. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, first a little background information. A nuclear device can be tailored to deliver a disproportionate effect. It can be heat, blast, or radiation. And radiation can be divided into ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. In my book, the Russians have tailored a bomb towards the non-ionizing part. This is an electromagnetic pulse. It has the ability to destroy all of the digital equipment. The scenario is on a supply ship to the International Space Stations, the Russians and the Chinese kill the crew and take over the International Space Station, from which they launch a barrage of nuclear bombs that completely blankets the United States with an electromagnetic pulse and burns out all of the digital equipment. Transformers, computers, everything will be destroyed. So then it becomes a question of how do we respond? What will be the survival? And that's what it is about. It's set right here and where I live in Wyoming, and what is required to survive.
Wow. Man, I'll tell you, hey, that's a big thing to talk about right now, and let's talk about it. First thing is, and my listeners are wondering, how realistic is this, Carl? Is this just something imaginary, or is it actually realistic?
I like to look down the road 10, 20, 30 years in advance. There are a number of scenarios, and frankly, in my opinion, this is not only possible, but quite possible. In fact, if I were the Russians and the Chinese, this is what I would do. Russia wants Western Europe for its technology. China wants the United States for its agricultural production. I do not believe the Chinese, in the figures they release for their population of 1.3 or 1.4 billion, I believe it is much, much closer to 1.7 or 8 billion. As a consequence, they need food production, and the United States is the garden spot of the planet. They can take over the United States. Most of the people, 300 million probably, would starve to death in the first 3 months. And they could take over the United States, farther the land and its production, without having to worry about fighting the population.
Isn't that something? You just gave an excellent motive to this. Usually, we will think of motives being ideological. But see, ideology is not enough, really, to cause a war. Sometimes, it seems that wars are caused on the basis of just, the way that one philosophizes, one thinks of world outlook, basically ideology. However, intelligent people think twice before they're going to, pull the gun in terms of just the way that they think. But now, in terms of survival, food supplies, that is a credible motivation. And now on the Russian side, I think you said it, but repeat it so it doesn't go over my listeners' heads. What would be one of the biggest motivations on the Russian side to create a war against the United States?
The Russian Empire, or I should say the former Soviet Union, no longer exists. Russia has a population of about 143 million now, but they want the technology and the population of Western Europe. NATO has never really fulfilled its promises or carried its share of the burden for its own defense. And you can see that right now going on with President Trump visiting over there. So Western Europe would be in a world of hurt to defend themselves against a massive Russian invasion.
Technology.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Again, another very credible reason to create war here. And in terms of the future, that's not a long time. 6 years, well, we're actually at the door of 2020 right now. So 5 years from now, 5+ years, we're talking about. With China, getting back to food, you had mentioned 300 million people starving. What's going to happen with the Chinese population in terms of food supply over the next 5 years until we get to 2025? And we have to realize that we're talking about human beings right now. We're not talking about enemies with everyday people. Are the Chinese people really in danger over the next 5 years of losing about 300 million people through starvation, or even more than that?
Well, it's not China that will lose 300 million. It's the United States.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because
Okay, yeah, keep going.
China, I believe, has fudged its figures. And if you study the geography of China, they are in a world of hurt. Much of their area is tremendously polluted, and much of their northwestern country, in Siang province and so forth, is desert. It's non-productive.
Right.
And their rush to industrialize, they have so polluted much of their country that food production is a problem. This is one of the reasons China is forcibly expanding into the South China Sea. They want the fisheries for food production.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I get it. So the 300 million that you were referring to in the beginning, that pertained to the American people who would starve after a war, after 2025. Now, the question actually still stands, though. In the meantime, how dire is this food constraint in China as far as people actually dying between now and 2025, Chinese people dying of starvation?
Well, China has had what is called a 4-to-1 program. 4 grandparents, 2 parents, 1 child, which has tremendously skewed the Chinese population towards males. They all want a male as the firstborn, which has resulted in a tremendous abortion of female infants. Mm-hmm. As a consequence, they have a tremendous population of single young men who will never be able to have a wife or have a family, and the army is a perfect place to put these people. Now, go ahead.
Well, you said quite a bit with the younger crowd there, males particularly, not having the opportunity probably of getting married into the future in China because of these constraints. With everything that's going on here that you're detailing, and you are detailing it, and it's very credible. I keep using that term. How about the American political structure? Did they know about this? I mean, they would know about it, we would think. Have they been preparing for this? Russia and the technological motivations for them to possibly attack the United States, China, and definitely the food constraints and problems in attacking the United States. Are United States officials politically, socially in any way, are they preparing for this? Are they doing anything about it right now?
Well, frankly, I do not hold our politicians in high regard. I think they see no further than their own reelection in most instances.
Yeah.
The thing about an EMP attack is it will destroy some of the infrastructure, but the people will be left to starve. It will not hurt the land, so to speak. I don't think our politicians are either cognizant of this, or if they are, they refuse to address it. It's like our budget. We talk about how many trillions we have, but our unfunded liabilities are, according to one article I just read, is over $100 trillion. So we are in a wild, how should I say, a very desperate financial situation, and we could crash at any time, which would be an ideal time for the Chinese to pull this off.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to make a reflection here at this juncture. After you, my listening audience, get a chance to order this book, 2025, by our special guest, Carl Berryman, and it's available on Amazon.com. You're listening to People of Distinction with Al Cole, and I'm going to make a reflection here. This is dire, people, and you know what Carl was saying is something that makes a lot of sense here, with technology on the Russian side, food particularly on the Chinese side, and the billions of people who would be affected by this in China and Russia, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of people that would be affected in this country. Population means something. You go to a baseball game, and we know that the bigger the city is, the more people are going to attend that game usually. And those people are cheering on their own home team. And that home team usually wins more than they lose in their own home arena. Because of that, China has a tremendous population, biggest population of any nation on the planet. And even if Chinese people are not necessarily cheering for any sort of war, and I don't believe that they are, people are human beings. Human beings want peace, naturally. Leaders sometimes want war. But the Chinese people, now, they are very attracted to their Chinese leaders. Just the opposite of some of the American population. We tend to distrust our leaders, and with good reason, after a while. But the Chinese have a different sort of culture. As Carl very well knows, they are brought up in the culture of Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism, Hinduism, and that is much more of a embracing culture when it comes down to the political forces. And the Chinese people will stand behind the political forces no matter how nefarious maybe some of their objection or some of their objects are. And what we need to understand is that we need to also, as American people, in terms of the way that Carl is putting it, we need to have leaders who are really responsive to this politically and socially, and who understand the threat, because I believe, after hearing Carl, that there is a threat. Now, it's a matter of what we do about it, how we elect our leaders. As Carl was saying, a lot of the Congress people, and I've had some of these Congress people on my show, they're very nice people, and they're knowledgeable in terms of what they say, but that doesn't mean everything that they say, that's not the extent of their knowledge. They might know other things that they're not saying, and sometimes they might not know some of the things that they're saying to completeness. We need to elect people who say what they really know and know what they really say. How do we go about doing that to protect the United States from threats from China and Russia? And that's another thing that I want to address with you, Carl. In terms of the American mindset being so polarized these days, and at the same time, the polarization leads to a basic distrust of sometimes the political system, but certainly the politicians. And only about maybe 10% of people think that Congress is doing a good job, maybe 15% or something. That's a very low percentage. And Donald Trump, as a U.S. president, has never gotten really substantially beyond 50%, and it's usually hovering anywhere between 35 to 43 or 44%. What do we do to clue in our politicians here in the United States to understand these threats and to counteract them with some sort of real policies now, before 2025? What would you say to that, Carl?
Well, you raised some excellent points. Very good. The country, as I see it today, is quite divisive. We cannot seem to elect people who cannot see any further their own next re-election. China, on the other hand, believes they are superior culturally to all others. Going back, they claim their culture is 5,000 plus years old. Ours, however, is... Oh, hold on. I dropped my pen here. Our cities will become absolute jungles in my novel because of lack of power, no water, no heat, no whatever. If they attack in the spring, the food supply from the previous year will be mostly exhausted. If they attack in the fall, the crops will not be harvested. Now, that goes back a little bit to our political situation? How do we elect representatives who are aware of this?
How do we?
That's a good question.
Well, I think I have some answers. They're not complete answers, but one would be term limits. I think, most of the American people would be in favor of term limits. We have senators who have been serving now for 40 years. And after a while, I hate to say it, but they're over the hill. And we have a new generation coming up, the millennials, who feel that they're over the hill. And as a result, a lot of the millennials kind of like block out politics. I don't want to get involved in that. That's, old hat. But it's not old hat. It's always new hat and, new people with new hats that are making big decisions. And if we're not part of the decision-making process, boy, we're behind the eight ball. I think another way to maybe counteract this outside of term limits would be, especially the President of the United States, I don't think that the President of the United States should have to represent any party. Because right from the start, if that president says he or she is a Republican, now, how is that person going to really represent Democrats? And there are more Democrats in this country than Republicans, and even more independents than Republicans and Democrats. So I think that the Oval Office should be independent from politics. When people run for office, they should not be endorsed by any particular party. And I think that might help out a little bit. And maybe a one-term president, well, that's a whole different thing. But instead of 8 years, maybe 4 years, and, the term limits generally. What do you think about those ideas, Carl? And maybe if Barb wants to chip in, that's fine, too.
Amen. I would like to see the repeal of the 17th Amendment, to be honest, when the state legislatures elected the senators to the U.S. Congress. Right now, the U.S. Senate is nothing more than a 6-year term House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I say amen to what you brought up as well. Now, this is very important stuff here. Now I'm talking to my people again, my listening audience. We're talking some of the most important talk that could be issued on the subject of our future. And the subject of our future involves all of us. And if it doesn't even involve us, it certainly involves our children, our children's children, posterity. And we really have to take it seriously for future generations. We've been around a long time, human beings on this planet. And if we want to stay in a position of being around a lot longer, we have to really start to take what Carl is talking about seriously. 2025, if it's not 2025, maybe 2035 or whatever. But in his book, it's 2025. And I want you to order that book again at Amazon.com. And it's all about what we've been talking about, Russia and China attacking the United States in the year 2025, which is almost upon us, people. And I want to close out the interview. You've been doing a wonderful job of explaining this, Carl, and also talking about some of the other things that we've brought up with maybe term limits and ways that we can clue in politicians to deal with this. Now, let's take it out with some possibility thinking here. I end all of my shows with possibility thinking. It's a way to encapsulate both the information as well as the spirit and inspiration of any topic that we talk about on People of Distinction. Even if it seems to be a negative topic, we turn it around to some sort of positive ending. And let's try to do that with 2025. In terms of Russia and China not attacking the United States, and the United States not attacking Russia and China in 2025. I asked earlier, what could we do to prevent it? You came up with some answers. I came up with maybe an answer as well. What if in 2025, instead of enemies, we are friends in our human family development? What would be some of the things, not to prevent war necessarily between now and 2025, but to foster peace in our world. What are some of the things that you think we can do to foster peace in our world over the next few years and foster people really reaching out to people, liking people again, and maybe even loving people and living kind of, just everyday, wonderful, accepting lives to people? Are there certain things that we can put on that radar screen right now, Carl?
Well, first of all, my look at history is our species, the human species, is very aggressive. There's hardly a time in our history when we have not been at war. There's always been a war somewhere in the world all throughout our history. As Albert Einstein said, I do not know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but I am sure World War IV will be fought with sticks and rocks. So, yeah, I don't believe that in our genes, whatever, there will always be a small segment of population who feel that they have the right to rule over others. I think that's pretty evident through the history of our human species.
Yes, it is. And I'm going to cap off the interview. It's been a wonderful spotlight interview here with Carl Berryman and his book 2025. I'm going to cap it off with this: impossibility thinking. How can we foster peace in our world? Well, people were doing it already. In any wonderful love relationship that we have, we're fostering peace. And I'm sure that Carl knows that in his relationship with Barb. And Barb knows that in her relationship with Carl. We foster peace anytime we look at somebody and we say, you're my brother, you're my sister. And we underscore love as the formative aspect to this. And not only people, but animals. We know that we love our pets. And not only just animals and human beings, but nature. There are some human beings that, boy, I love to go camping. I love to be around this mountain. I love to be around this waterway. Whatever. Whatever you love, people, put it on the front burner. Don't put it in the back burner. Don't say, oh, that's personal stuff. It isn't personal. That is the nature of being a human being. When that baby is first born, and that baby was you, comes out and says, wow, I'm here, I made it. I'm actually alive. That baby is saying, thank you, life, for bringing me into this, for giving me the chance to explore life, to experience life, and to experience love. And then, in our finest love relationships, when we're married, we say the same thing. Thank you to our spouse. Thank you. And as we do that, and we make it better for somebody else in our world, not just for us, somebody else that we love, and make it a better way for them, and actually not only just live for the best that we can be, but the best that somebody else can be. Now we realize that every single person has the same dream for the people that they love, and once we start to honor the love that other people have for the love in their lives for other people, now we're on the right track, and we need the media to put it that way. It's not just good enough for Al Cole to say that, or anybody else who comes to my show, or it's not even good enough for us to say that in any sort of personal speech to each other. We need to say it through mass media, that love really is the key. And yes, Barb, what did you want to add to that?
What I wanted to add to that is that Carl discusses how coordinated efforts and activities will tell you how to survive should this occur. That's a big part of the book.
Is that something that Carl has put on the radar screen so far? Did he discuss that?
No.
Okay, so you have a couple of minutes to put that on the radar screen to my listeners right now, what Barb just said.
The human species, even looking at chimpanzees, we have always been territorial. And you can define territory as either land or economy or whatever. we seem to be able to want to destroy or kill anybody who is different or needs or has resources that we need, be it mining, minerals, gold, ocean, fish from the ocean, land for farming, whatever. We always have had this notion, even going back into the chimpanzees and other species. Almost all species are to some degree territorial, and I think the humans are the worst.
Okay, well, I would not disagree with that. Territory.
Well, Barbara's pointing out here, Divided We Fall, another book that I wrote over 10 years ago, which really actually deals with a different subject, with political correctness taking hold of the United States.
Okay.
That's something else.
All right, good. Now, what I would say to that, again, to my listening audience, is that just to cap off the show, because of time constraints, however, people, even though we are territorial as a species, the human family here, we are not quite as territorial with the ones that we love. We're territorial with the ones that we don't care about too much, or the ones who we just tangentially care about. Rent. Consider it this way. Rent and mortgage payments. If you have if you own an apartment building and you're renting it out to people that you don't know, and of course you are going to be renting it out to people that you don't know, if they don't pay the rent for 2 or 3 months, well, you start proceedings that way to evict them. If you have a mortgage company and somebody doesn't pay the mortgage for 2 or 3 months, well, you do the same thing. You start bankruptcy proceedings. However, if it's your son or daughter, and you love that son or daughter, and that son or daughter has a hard time, and you know the hard time that they're going through, and they say, Dad, Mom, I need some time here. And if maybe a couple of months go by and they don't pay you the rent, you're not going to kick them out as easily. You're not going to be as territorial. And see, it comes down to that. It comes down to we still can care about human beings. We can still foster love in our world, and as we do that, now we're less territorial and we're less judgmental. And as we're less judgmental, hey, we are now accruing more love and respect for people. And if we respect people, boy, that is on the way to making a better world. And maybe even preventing 2025 from happening, Russia, China attacks on the United States. In the meantime, I still want you to order that book, 2025 by Carl Berryman, my special guest on People of Distinction with Al Cole. It's available to you at Amazon.com. And again, he was brought to us by AuthorReputationPress.com. And you can go there, and if you got a book that you want to move, there you movers, AuthorReputationPress.com. Thank you so much, Carl, for this stimulating and excellent technical point of view here with Russia and China through your book, 2025. Attacking the U.S., and we appreciate all of the creative aspects that you put into that book, and we also appreciate Barb, her help, your wife, with anything that she had to add here because of any sort of hearing problem that you might have. But you did well. We didn't even get any inkling that you had a hearing problem. So we congratulate you, and we congratulate you too, Barb, both for being guests on People of Distinction today. Keep up the great work, and we wish you all the best with your book and with your life directions. Thank you so much.
Well, it is our pleasure, and enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
I really did. You asked credible, intelligent questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you, and you made certainly credible and intelligent answers.